Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. She's a bass. Sorry.
Okay. Yes.
You get that reference?
No, I don't. That's good for you. All right. Okay, so we are looking at a prayer again today. This, again, in Deuteronomy chapter 26. We looked at the first section last time, and that was the prayer for the first fruits. Now we have the prayer for the tithes. Is there something wrong with your nose?
Yeah, I was being weird, so I decided to fix it.
Is it on upside down? Sideways?
No.
Backwards?
No. Read the things.
Anyway. All right, so down in verse number 12, Moses switches gears a little bit. And he says, after you finished paying your tithe, and if we remember, the tithe was the 10% that they were supposed to get, which was kind of in connection. I mean, the first fruits kind of was part of the idea of that. But the tithe actually had to be paid every third year. They had a year. Every third year they had to bring the tithe in. So they basically didn't pay their tithe. You know, we think of churches, especially denominational churches, talk about tithing like every week or every month or whatever. They didn't tithe every week or even every month, even every year. They saved the tithing up for 3 years and then brought it.
Don't get any ideas.
No. Well, okay. So they had a year of tithing when they would bring their tithes. And that's kind of a little unusual too. But when they did that, he said, here's what you have to do, what you have to say when you come before God. So verse 13, he gives them, again, this is a prescribed prayer, just like the one we talked about last time, where he actually tells them what they need to say. So he says, I have removed the sacred portion out of my house. And this kind of goes along with what Paul says about giving in the church when he writes to the Christians, and he talks about lay by and store on the first day of every week, so that when I come, there won't be gathering. So there, again, they stored it up, and so then when Paul came, then they gave it to him, and they didn't have to rush out to try to sell stuff when he showed up to try to get the money. They just saved it up, and so this is the same kind of an idea. And so what he says for them to say,
And it's interesting nowadays how things have changed to the point that we no longer really save up over the week for an offering on Sundays. It's more of just you get the paycheck, oh well, I'll take however much out of this and just give it. So you've already got it by whenever you get paid, weekly, monthly, whatever, and you've got it at that point. So
but we don't store it up at home for 6 months waiting for Paul to show up to get it either.
Right. Yeah.
We bring it each Sunday when we come. And now, we were in this situation where for the first couple of weeks, we didn't actually meet at all before we started our parking lot service after the pandemic thing with the quarantine. We didn't meet for 2 weeks. So, the elders were like, you can save up your offering and bring it when we get back together, or if you want to mail it in or drop it off or whatever, or if there is a need that you see in your community, one of your neighbors is hungry, buy them some food or something. Use it. Go ahead and take care of that need with that offering, and then you get back to it when we get back. So that was kind of a different way of things working than we're used to.
Yeah.
But it is weird because they would have thought it odd that every Sunday, we're bringing and giving some of our money. They would have thought that was unusual because that's not the way they did it. And like I said, with them, they're waiting 3 years to store this stuff up.
Yeah.
But even if we think about even like a weekly thing, in the first century, a lot of the laborers would have been day laborers, which means they got paid every day. They didn't get paid by the week or the month. So, every day when they got paid, they would have needed to save a little out of that to give. So it's definitely, and again, one of the things that we're trying to do with these studies on prayer is to open our minds to the different ways that things were done in the Bible, or the different ways that things could be done, instead of just the way we think it's always got to be because it's always been that way.
Yeah.
Things are different in different places and in different times and different circumstances. And the person that gets paid every day has to do things differently. I know that a lot of people, especially on retirement or things like that, they get paid by the month. Teachers a lot of times get paid by the month. I get paid by the month. So I get a check on the first of the month. Well, if I decided to just take out what I was going to give out of that and give that all the first Sunday of the month, there wouldn't be anything wrong with that. Now I don't. I give every week, partially because as the preacher, it's good for people see that I'm giving every week. It's kind of an example thing more than anything else. And so, but we don't. If you get, it says give as you have prospered. Well, if you prospered monthly, give monthly. It's not the end of the world. There are some people though that get really bent out of shape if somebody doesn't put something in the collection plate every week.
Yeah.
And yet, there's nothing in the Bible that says somebody's got to put something on the collection plate every week. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. So, again, we want to look at what the Bible says instead of just our preconceived ideas or the I've always done it this way or I've always seen it done this way. And we want to look at what the Bible actually says about these things. Why are we off topic onto giving?
I don't know. You went on a several minute long rant there. Where were we in this prayer?
We hadn't actually started the prayer yet.
Oh,
we were just about to talk about the prayer when you went off on giving and stuff.
This is a typical video for us. Almost 7 minutes in, and we haven't started yet.
Well, there's a lot of background in some of these.
That has to do with the prayer.
Yeah, it's connected.
This is what this prayer is about. So there's the background that you got to build up to. All right, so in verse 13 then, this is what you shall say before God. I have removed the sacred portion out of my house. So remember, as they went along, they're storing up God's sacred portion, his tithe, his 10%. And I don't know, they have a closet or a room for that or whatever. And so they were storing it up. And they say, okay, I've removed it, and I have given it to the Levite, the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, according to all your commandment that you've commanded me. So their tithe that they were collecting, their 10%, was to be given to either the Levites, because they were God's tribe that was doing his service, or to those who were in need, the widows, the orphans, those who were traveling, sojourners, things like that. Okay, so then he says, I have not transgressed any of your commandments, nor have I forgotten them. I have not eaten of the tithe while I was mourning, or removed any of it while I was unclean, or offered any of it to the dead. I have obeyed the voice of the Lord my God. I have done according to all that you have commanded me. So there's some more. Those are some interesting statements that they add in there about what they have or haven't done with the tithe. I didn't do anything with any of it when I was unclean, because this was something that it talks about the sacred portion. This was something that was sacred for God.
Yeah.
You don't touch it when you're unclean. That would ruin it. And also, I haven't eaten any of it.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be eating that. That's not for you. But actually, it says, I have not eaten while I was mourning. It doesn't say I never ate any of it. Just not while I was mourning. But again, part of that could have been something that was given to the fatherless, the widow, and things. But it's just an interesting thing. I haven't offered any of it to the dead. I don't even know what that practice is about.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
The Egyptians, when they entombed somebody, they put food and stuff in there with the dead for like their next life or whatever. So maybe it's something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
It kind of makes sense.
My thing has a footnote on that has Ezekiel 24:17.
Okay.
And Ezekiel 24:17 is talking about mourning rites for the dead.
Yeah.
So, just I guess what that means is they didn't use those things for ceremony or something.
Yeah. Funeral. Yeah. This wasn't funeral food.
So basically, if you have a funeral, you can't give
You
this.
can't use your tithe. You can't use your tithe money to buy funeral food. Is that? Oh, I know some people might be in trouble. All right.
Are
Now,
the Israelites?
but yeah, it's interesting things. And again, it reminds us how much different their culture was. That there's so many things like that we run across, and we're like, what even? What are they talking about? That's so weird. So he goes on to say then at the end of this, in verse 15, then so after they promised God that they're bringing the tithe and they've done all His commandments, then they say, now look down from your holy habitation from heaven and bless your people Israel and the ground that you've given us as you swore to our fathers, a land flowing with milk and honey. So they're again remembering that the land they live in is a blessing from God, that they're receiving the promises, the things they've been promised. And it's a reminder each time that they bring this tithe in that God kept His promises and that they're supposed to be keeping His commandments. I wonder how different. And again, this was an individual thing. Each person has to do this when they bring their tithe in.
Yeah.
I wonder if we had everybody, when they bring their offering to church, have to pray, hey God, I've kept all your commandments. I haven't misused any of your money, of this money. I haven't forgotten any of your commandments. And here now, receive my offering and bless me like you've promised to bless. Wow, I wonder how that would work out.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's some reasons that the Israelites kind of forgot to keep up with certain things in the law.
They didn't want to.
I feel like if we did do this every time, then for some people at least, they could get to the point where it became less. We know you've done everything for us, so we're doing this, and more like, okay, I'm giving you my money, I'm giving you this stuff, so I expect blessings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm buying blessings from you. Yeah.
Catholics.
Yeah. It could be that way if we let it. There are a lot of things where but and yet and that's kind of the problem that they got into, where they started thinking kind of that way, and that's what a lot of the prophets start to condemn them for, because they're like, you know what, God's not accepting your tithes and offerings anymore because you're coming in here with this bad attitude, and you're thinking you deserve something because of this, and you've missed the point. He blessed you, and because He blessed you, you owe Him more than you can ever pay. So yeah, it definitely could be something that could happen. But these two in this chapter, again, I know I've read them before, but running across them this time and looking at them, I never really thought about them and how impactful that would have been for them to have that ceremony each time. And this one, again, part of it, what you're talking about, like with it, if we did that every week, that would get, it would get old with people really fast.
Right.
They're only doing this every 3 years, once every 3 years.
Yeah, that's going to keep things seeming pretty important.
Yeah, it's a big deal when they have this tithe year and they bring their tithes to Jerusalem. And
I wonder how long they kept up with it, because we know that a lot of things like this later on in the Old Testament, they're like, oh, well, we haven't done that in forever.
Yeah, well, it's pretty clear by the time of the Judges they'd lost a lot of stuff already. Yeah. I mean, just within one generation they start just really losing stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and
it don't take long.
No, I mean, The old saying is that the church is always just one generation from apostasy, and I've always thought it's not that far. I mean, it does not take that long to just forget, to just go on your own way and do your own thing, and not follow God's command. I wonder too. You know, did they even do this during Joshua's time when they came into the land? Did they do it at all ever? I mean, even things like I mean, we think of the Passover as like this big, huge thing,
Oh yeah.
and yet,
It's like everybody comes from all over to
yeah.
Jerusalem to take the Passover, and we see that in Jesus' time. But
But then we realize, like, and the other thing, circumcision was a big deal. You know, every baby when he's 8, the boys that are 8, when they're 8 days old, they circumcise them, and then we find all that time they were in the wilderness, they didn't circumcise anybody. They come across the river to Gilgal, and they have to stop and circumcise everybody because they hadn't been doing it. And so then they got to wait, you know, because they're hurting and sore from the surgery until they heal up before they can go fight the Battle of Jericho. And it's like, but wait, this is Moses and Joshua. You didn't, I mean, y'all weren't doing this? And so you can be assured once they died, it got even worse.
oh yeah.
I mean, you don't even.
Although to be fair, Moses himself forgot to circumcise his own kids.
He didn't circumcise his
Yeah.
own. Yeah, his wife had to do it for him before God tried to kill him.
Yeah.
Which that's an interesting story too.
That is an interesting story.
We won't get into that.
Nope.
We're right out of time. But yeah, there's so many of these things. You know, doing things from the heart was always so important to God. You know, we think about the Old Testament as this rules and regulations. Like, well, yeah, they've even got the exact words that they're supposed to say written down in these prayers and the way they're supposed to say it. Yes, they did, but they were still, their heart was still supposed to be in it. It wasn't supposed to just be, okay, you know, here, read these words off, and they don't mean anything. The point of the words was to remind you where you came from, that God brought you to this land flowing with milk and honey, that He blessed you with these things, and you're given this portion of it back to help the Levites and the needy, to help the land not have the kind of poverty problems that other nations around them had.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you think if everybody gave 10% of their income to the poor, it could make a big difference to the poor in a society. So, of course, you know, depending on how many poor you had, if you had more poor than you had that weren't, you wouldn't help a lot. But that was the point. God was blessing them to try to help them really lessen how many poor they had in their society. And we see, you know, it wasn't the government doing it. It was they were supposed to do it. They were supposed to take care of it themselves. Charity needs to come from the heart, and it needs to be the closer to home, as far as, you know, the closer to local it is, the better it's going to be used, and the better you can know who needs it and who is going to abuse it or whatever. So, all right. So this prayer, a good one, and hopefully help us think about our giving. And the other thing I want to,
Whether or not we're putting our hearts into it.
yeah. But I mean, can you imagine if we had to save up our giving for 3 years before we brought it? How many of you suppose would actually be able to keep up with it for 3 years?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, that'd be rough. That'd be tough to keep up with for that long.
And that just goes to show, before you criticize the Israelites and the Old Testament people for falling down on the job.
Would you have been able to do that?
Yeah.
No. None of us would have been able to keep it all. Anyway. I mean, you lost your wallet, what, 3 times this past year?
At least.
At least. If you lost your...
Okay, if you consider one of those times to be that, like, it was just gone for 6 months, and I didn't even bother to look for it in that amount of time.
Yeah,
Um,
and then didn't know where it was.
Yeah. I mean, I still have it, just in case you were wondering.
He found
It's
it
in my
today.
pocket right now.
Found it today. Yeah.
All right. It has been a long one this time.
We aren't going to go for the record.
No, I think we're gonna go ahead and end it here.
And we forget, and we're glad to have Spencer with us again. If you remembered him from their video about learning how to pray and troubles with
Footnotes
prayer.
and comments are helpful.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yep.
And who knows? Maybe next week after y'all come back, maybe he might get to be in another one with us. I don't know.
No telling. All right, so we hope that you enjoyed this one. Hope that it was helpful, that you were able to learn something. Hope you weren't too bored by all of the ancient culture talk stuff.
That should be interesting stuff. Not everybody's interested.
Yeah. And we hope that you will be back tomorrow for another video.
Bye.